Hello, this is Sarah. I'm going to read you Debbie's tale today, which is titled, He Made Fun of Me During My Brother's Housewarming. Not everyone can afford a two-bedroom flat. My parents grinned as well as everyone else laughed. Is that why you bought a five-bedroom house? My aunt asked me as she turned to face me. Dead quiet. All right, let's leave. In my family, I've always been the odd one out. I enjoy the peaceful hum of my computer and the fulfillment of producing clean code, while my relatives enjoy their boisterous parties and frequent social media updates. I'm a 28-year-old software developer named Debbie. Since I don't flaunt my accomplishments as other individuals do, the majority of people are unaware of my true level of success. My older brother, Jake, is everything my parents wanted in a child. He's loud, funny, the life of every party. He followed Dad into the family business, a chain of small car repair shops. Everyone thinks he's amazing. Meanwhile, I'm the one they barely acknowledge exists. I remember being a kid and watching my relatives gather for holidays. They'd all laugh at Jake's jokes, pat him on the back, tell him how proud they were. When it came to me, they'd give me these awkward smiles and ask generic questions about school before quickly moving on to talk to someone more interesting. As I got older, it only got worse. While Jake was posting pictures of himself at parties and family gatherings, I was building websites and learning new programming languages. I dressed simply, jeans, t-shirts, nothing flashy. I didn't see the point in posting every meal or selfie online like my cousins did. She's so antisocial, Aunt Linda would whisper to Mom during family dinners. It's not normal for a girl her age. The breaking point came at Grandma's 80th birthday party 2 years ago. I couldn't skip it. It was Grandma's milestone birthday, and she'd specifically asked for me to be there. The whole family was crammed into the community center, everyone talking over each other, kids running around screaming. I was standing near the dessert table, trying to stay out of the way, when I overheard Aunt Linda talking to Mom near the kitchen doorway. There's something wrong with that girl, Aunt Linda was saying, nodding in my direction. She just sits there, staring at people. It's weird. I think she might have some kind of mental problem. I froze, waiting for Mom to defend me, to say something, anything, to shut down that cruel comment. Instead, Mom sighed heavily. I know. I'm honestly embarrassed by her sometimes. She acts so strange around people. I don't know what to do with her anymore. Those words hit me like a punch to the gut. My own mother was embarrassed by me. Not disappointed, not worried, embarrassed. I stood there for another hour, smiling when people looked my way, participating in the birthday song, acting like nothing had happened. But inside, I was done. Completely done. That night, I made a decision. If they thought I was weird, if they were embarrassed by me, if they saw me as some kind of burden, then fine. I wouldn't inflict my presence on them anymore. From that day forward, I stopped going to family events. When invitations came for Christmas dinner, Easter brunch, Cousin Sarah's wedding, I politely declined. I'd send gifts with nice cards, but I wouldn't show up. The only family member who understood was Aunt Margaret, Mom's older sister. She was different from the rest of them, quieter, more thoughtful. She'd come visit me at my rented apartment, bringing homemade cookies and actually listening when I talked about my work. You're not weird, honey, she'd tell me over coffee. You're just wired differently than the rest of them. There's nothing wrong with preferring peace and quiet. Aunt Margaret would fill me in on family news during her visits. Jake got promoted to manager at one of the shops. Mom redecorated the living room. Dad bought a new truck. She gave me just enough information to stay connected without having to actually deal with them directly. Meanwhile, I was happier than I'd been in years. My work was going incredibly well. I had a small circle of close friends who actually got me. I was dating a sweet guy named Tom, who worked in graphic design. We'd spend quiet evenings together, cooking dinner and watching movies. It was exactly the kind of life I wanted. My 28th birthday proved how much better my life had become. Instead of a big family gathering where I'd sit in the corner feeling like an outsider, I had dinner with Tom and 5 close friends at my favorite restaurant. We laughed until our sides hurt, shared dessert, and nobody felt the need to take a million photos for social media. My parents sent a text message, "Happy birthday. Hope you have a nice day." That was it. No phone call, no visit, no real effort. Jake didn't even bother with a text. The only family member who made my birthday special was Aunt Margaret. She showed up at my apartment with a homemade chocolate cake and a genuine smile. "I'm so proud of you," she said as we sat in my small kitchen, sharing cake and coffee. "Look at everything you've accomplished." That's when I decided to tell her my secret. "I'm buying a house," I said quietly. Her eyes widened. "Really? That's amazing." I pulled out my phone and showed her the photos. It was a beautiful 5-bedroom house in one of the nicest neighborhoods in town. Hardwood floors, updated kitchen, a backyard with mature trees. It was everything I dreamed of. 5 bedrooms? Aunt Margaret's voice was full of wonder. "Debbie, this is incredible. You must be doing so well at work." I nodded, feeling proud but also nervous about sharing this news. "I am. But please don't tell anyone else yet. I want to keep this private." "Of course," she promised. "But honey, you should be proud of this. This is a huge accomplishment." 2 weeks later, I got the keys. My house, my space, my sanctuary. Moving into my new house felt like stepping into a completely different life. Every room was mine to decorate however I wanted. No more thin apartment walls where I could hear neighbors arguing. No more worrying about disturbing anyone with my late-night coding sessions. This was my space, and it was perfect. I spent weeks getting everything just right. The master bedroom became my sanctuary with soft gray walls and blackout curtains. One of the spare bedrooms became my home office, complete with dual monitors and the best ergonomic chair I could find. Another room I set up as a guest room for when Aunt Margaret or my friends stayed over. The remaining bedrooms stayed empty for now, but I had plans. The kitchen was my favorite part: granite countertops, stainless steel appliances, and enough space to actually cook real meals instead of surviving on takeout. I bought a dining table that could seat 8 people, even though I rarely had more than 4 guests at once. It just felt good to have the option. After everything was settled, I decided to throw a small housewarming party. Nothing crazy, just Tom, my closest friends, and Aunt Margaret. I sent out simple text invitations to about 10 people, asking them to come by on Saturday afternoon for food and drinks. My friend group was small but solid. There was Sarah from college, who worked as a teacher, Mark and Lisa, a couple I'd met through work, who were both in tech, James, who I'd known since high school and now worked as an accountant. Tom brought flowers and kept complimenting everything about the house. A few other friends from various parts of my life rounded out the group. Aunt Margaret arrived with a casserole dish, and the biggest smile I'd ever seen on her face. "I am so proud of you," she said, pulling me into a tight hug. "This house is absolutely beautiful." We spent the afternoon eating, talking, and giving tours of the house. Everyone was genuinely happy for me. No one made jokes about me being antisocial or weird. No one questioned whether I could actually afford the place. They just celebrated with me. As the sun started setting, people began heading home. Aunt Margaret was the last to leave, and she helped me clean up the kitchen. "That was perfect," she said, drying dishes while I loaded the dishwasher. "Just the right size, just the right people. Very you." It was nice, I agreed. So different from those huge family gatherings where you can barely hear yourself think. "Speaking of family," Aunt Margaret said carefully, "your mother asked me if I'd heard from you lately." I paused in wiping down the counter. "What did you tell her?" "That you were doing well." She seemed, I don't know, maybe a little curious about what you've been up to. Curious enough to call me herself? Aunt Margaret gave me a sympathetic look. "You know how she is, honey." I didn't know. Mom was too proud to reach out directly, but she'd fish for information through other people. It was easier than admitting she might have been wrong about me. 2 months passed peacefully in my new house. I fell into a comfortable routine, work from home most days, meeting clients when needed, spending evenings cooking in my beautiful kitchen or reading in the living room. Tom came over a few nights a week, and we'd watch movies or work on our respective projects in comfortable silence. Then, on a Tuesday evening while I was debugging some code, my phone rang. Jake's name appeared on the screen. I stared at it for a moment, surprised. He hadn't called me in over a year. "Hello," I answered cautiously. "Hey, Debbie, how's it going?" His voice was unusually cheerful, almost forced. "I'm fine. What's up? Can't a brother just call to check on his sister?" He laughed, but it sounded fake. "I was just wondering how you've been doing lately." I waited, knowing there had to be more to this call. "Actually," he continued, "I'm calling because I wanted to invite you to something. I bought an apartment, a really nice 2-bedroom place downtown. I'm having a housewarming party this Saturday, and I want you to come." A housewarming party. The irony wasn't lost on me. "Oh," I said. "That's... Congratulations." "Thanks. So, can you make it?" "It'll be the whole family. Mom, Dad, all the aunts and uncles. It's been way too long since we've all been together." The whole family. All the people who used to whisper about how weird I was. All the people who'd made me feel like an outsider my entire life. "I don't know, Jake. I'm pretty busy these days." "Come on, Debbie. It's important to me. Please." There was something in his voice, almost pleading. This was strange. Jake had never specifically invited me to anything before. Usually, I just got included in mass family invitations, and everyone knew I wouldn't show up. I found myself saying yes, though I wasn't sure why. Maybe I was curious about what he was up to. Maybe some small part of me missed being included, even if it usually went badly. After hanging up, I immediately called Aunt Margaret. "He invited me to his housewarming party," I told her. "I know, I got an invitation too," she said. "The whole family is going to be there." "But why? Jake's never invited me to anything before. What's his angle?" Aunt Margaret was quiet for a moment, then she started laughing. "What's funny?" "Oh, honey," she said between chuckles, "I think your brother wants to show off in front of you. He probably thinks you're still struggling in that little apartment, and he wants everyone to see how much better he's doing than his weird little sister." The pieces clicked into place. Jake didn't know about my house. None of them did, except Aunt Margaret. As far as my family knew, I was still renting that tiny 1-bedroom apartment and working some mysterious computer job that probably didn't pay very well. I felt a slow smile spreading across my face. This is going to be interesting. What are you thinking? I'm thinking I'm really looking forward to this housewarming party. Saturday came faster than I expected. I spent some time picking out what to wear, settling on dark jeans and a nice sweater. Nothing too fancy, but not the thrift store look my family probably expected. I bought Jake a good coffee maker as a housewarming gift, something that cost more than they'd probably guess. Jake's apartment building was downtown, one of those new complexes with a gym and a doorman. Nice, but not spectacular. I took the elevator to the 4th floor and found his door already propped open, voices and laughter spilling into the hallway. The moment I walked in, I felt all those familiar feelings rushing back. The apartment was packed with relatives I hadn't seen in over a year. Aunt Linda was holding court near the kitchen, gesturing wildly while telling some story. My cousins were clustered around the living room, all of them looking at their phones while pretending to listen to each other. And there were Mom and Dad, standing near the window with drinks in their hands. They spotted me immediately. "Debbie," Mom's voice was artificially bright. "You actually came." The way she said it made it sound like she was shocked I'd left my cave. Several relatives turned to look at me, and I could practically hear them thinking the same thing they always did. There's the weird one. "Hi, Mom, Dad." I gave them both awkward hugs and handed over the gift bag. "This is for Jake." Dad took the bag and peered inside. "A coffee maker." "That's nice." He didn't sound impressed. I could feel people staring at me, doing that thing they always did, looking me up and down, probably noting my simple clothes and lack of jewelry. I heard whispers behind me. "She looks exactly the same. still dressing like she shops at thrift stores. I heard she still lives in that tiny apartment. I just smiled and nodded at everyone, not bothering to engage. Aunt Margaret caught my eye from across the room and gave me a knowing look. Jake appeared at my side, grinning widely. "Debbie, you made it." He was louder than necessary, making sure everyone heard. "Come on, let me show you around." His apartment was nice. Modern furniture, big windows, decent kitchen, 2 bedrooms, just like he'd said. He walked me through every room, pointing out features like the granite countertops and the walk-in closet. "Pretty impressive, right?" he said as we finished the tour in the living room. 2 bedrooms, great location, all the amenities. I'm doing pretty well for myself. "It's very nice," I said honestly. That's when I noticed the woman standing next to him, blonde, pretty, wearing a dress that probably cost more than my entire outfit. "Oh, and this is my fiancé, Jessica," Jake said, putting his arm around her. "We're getting married in the spring." This was news to me. "Congratulations," I said, shaking Jessica's hand. "I didn't know you were engaged." "Just happened last month," Jake said proudly. "We've been planning the perfect life together." All the relatives gathered around to coo over Jessica's ring and talk about wedding plans. I stood there listening, feeling like I was watching a movie about someone else's life. Eventually, everyone sat down around Jake's dining table for dinner. I found myself squeezed between Aunt Margaret and one of my younger cousins. Jake stood up to make a toast. "I want to thank everyone for coming to celebrate with Jessica and me," he said, raising his beer. "This apartment represents everything I've worked for. I've got a great business, a beautiful fiancé, and now the perfect place to start our life together." Everyone applauded and clinked glasses. Then Jake's eyes found mine across the table. "You know, Debbie," he said, his voice carrying that fake concerned tone, "you should really take a good look around this place. Maybe it'll give you some goals to work toward." A few people chuckled. Dad smiled, that smug smile I remembered from childhood. "I mean," Jake continued, "you can't live in that rental apartment forever, right? Maybe someday you'll be able to afford something like this." The table got quiet for a moment. Everyone was looking at me, waiting to see how I'd react to being put in my place. I could feel my cheeks getting warm, but not from embarrassment, from anticipation. That's when Aunt Margaret cleared her throat loudly. "Is that why she bought a 5-bedroom house?" Aunt Margaret asked, her voice innocent, but carrying clearly across the table. "Because she can't afford a 2-bedroom apartment?" The silence that followed was deafening. Every conversation stopped. Every fork paused halfway to someone's mouth. All eyes turned to me. Mom was the first to speak. "What did you just say?" I took a sip of water, letting the moment stretch. "I bought a house 2 months ago. 5 bedrooms, actually. It's in Oakwood Heights." Oakwood Heights was the most expensive neighborhood in town, and everyone knew it. The whispers started immediately. Jake's face had gone completely white. "You're joking," he said weakly. "She's not joking," Aunt Margaret said, pulling out her phone. "I was at her housewarming party. Beautiful place." She started passing her phone around the table, showing the photos she'd taken that day. I watched as each person's expression changed from skeptical to shocked to something that looked almost like panic. "How can you afford it?" Mom started, then stopped. "I'm a lead software developer. I work with Fortune 500 companies on their core systems. I've been doing pretty well for myself." The room erupted. Everyone started talking at once. Some people were asking if they could see the house. Others were saying they always knew I'd do well. A few were claiming they'd always supported me. I just sat there, eating my dinner, watching the chaos unfold. Jake looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Mom and Dad were sitting in shocked silence, probably trying to figure out how they'd gotten it so wrong. "You should have another housewarming party," someone called out. "Invite all of us. We could help you decorate," another voice added. I always said Debbie was the smart one in the family. I nearly laughed at that last one. These were the same people who'd whispered about how weird I was for years. After about an hour of the circus, I'd had enough. I stood up and announced I was leaving. "Wait," Several people called out, "Tell us more about the house." "Maybe next time," I said, knowing there wouldn't be a next time. I drove home feeling lighter than I had in years. My phone started buzzing with messages before I even got out of the car, but I ignored them all. Instead, I walked into my beautiful, spacious house, kicked off my shoes, and flopped onto my couch. "I am never inviting any of them here," I said out loud to my empty living room. "Not ever." The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. Mom had called 6 times. Dad left 4 voicemails. Jake sent a string of texts that started apologetic and got increasingly desperate. Even cousins I hadn't heard from in years were suddenly reaching out. I made coffee and scrolled through the messages while sitting in my kitchen. Most of them followed the same pattern: surprise, fake congratulations, and hints about wanting to see my house. Mom's first voicemail was typical. "Debbie, honey, call me back. We need to talk about last night. I had no idea you were doing so well." Her third voicemail was more demanding. "Debbie, you can't just drop that bomb and disappear. We're your family." Jake's more to this. I deleted most of the messages without responding. The only person I called back was Aunt Margaret. "How are you feeling this morning?" she asked, sounding amused. "Satisfied," I said. "Honestly, it was worth it just to see Jake's face." "They're all talking about you, you know," she said. "Linda called 3 different people to gossip about your house. Everyone's suddenly very interested in maintaining a relationship with you." I snorted. Funny how that works. The calls and texts continued for days. I ignored most of them but eventually answered when Mom called for the 10th time. "Debbie, we need to talk," she said without preamble. "Why don't you come over for dinner Sunday?" "Just family." "I'm busy," I said. "I have plans with friends." There was a pause. "Debbie, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Your father and I want to make things right between us. We've missed you." I almost laughed. "You've missed me? When exactly did you miss me?" "During the year and a half I didn't come to any family events, and you never called to check on me." Mom's voice got that edge it always had when she wasn't getting her way. "Debbie, we're your family. We love you. If you loved me, you wouldn't have spent years making me feel like there was something wrong with me." I hung up before she could respond. 2 weeks later, on a Saturday afternoon while I was working in my garden, a car pulled into my driveway. Mom, Dad, Jake, and Jessica got out, looking around at my house with obvious envy. I sighed and walked over to meet them at the front door. "What are you doing here?" "Your aunt gave us your address," Mom said. Like that explained everything. "We wanted to see your beautiful home." I didn't invite them in, but they walked past me anyway. Jake whistled low as they entered the foyer. "This place is incredible," Jessica said, looking around with wide eyes. "How much did it cost?" "That's not really your business," I replied. They wandered through my living room and kitchen, touching things, opening cabinets, acting like they were house shopping. It made my skin crawl. "So," Jake said, turning to face me with that fake smile, "I've been thinking. You know how successful the family business has been. Well, I've got this great opportunity to expand, open 2 more shops." Here it comes, I thought. "I'm looking for investors," he continued. "Family investors. You could get in on the ground floor of something really big." I stared at him. "You want me to invest in your car repair shops?" "It's a solid investment, guaranteed returns, and it would be a great way for us to work together. You know, bring the family business into the modern age with your tech skills." I started laughing. I couldn't help it. "What's funny?" Dad asked sternly. "I prefer to invest my money in reliable businesses," I said, still chuckling. Jake's face went red. "My business is reliable." "I'm sure it is, but I'm not interested." The mood in the room shifted. Mom and Dad exchanged looks. "Debbie," Dad said in that tone he used to use when I was in trouble as a kid, "we want to rebuild our relationship. Family should help family." There it was. The real reason they were here. "You want to rebuild our relationship because you found out I have money," I said flatly. "That's not fair," Mom protested, but her voice lacked conviction. "Isn't it? Where were you on my birthday? Where were you when I bought this house? Where were you during any of the actual important moments in my life? Jake stepped forward. Look, I know we weren't close before, but now you need money, so suddenly I'm family again. The silence stretched uncomfortably. I think you should leave, I said finally. Debbie, you're being unreasonable, Dad said. We're trying to make an effort here. I don't want your effort. I don't want your fake concern. I don't want any of this. I walked to the front door and opened it. Please leave. They stood there for a moment, looking shocked that I was actually kicking them out. Fine, Jake said as they filed toward the door. But don't expect an invitation to my wedding. I smiled. I wouldn't come anyway. The next day, Aunt Margaret called me. Your mother called me crying yesterday. She says you've become greedy and ungrateful. And what do you think? I think you're protecting yourself, and it's about time. Over the next few weeks, the family drama continued without me. Aunt Margaret kept me updated on the gossip, how Mom was telling everyone I'd gotten too big for my britches, how Jake was complaining that I was selfish, how various relatives were taking sides. I didn't care. I had my work, which was going better than ever. I had Tom, my boyfriend, who'd moved in with me last month. I had my small circle of real friends who liked me for who I was, not what I could do for them. And I had Aunt Margaret, who still came over every Sunday with homemade cookies and genuine conversation.